Hey guys, thanks so much for joining us as we kick off this new series, Love, Sex, and Dating. This is going to be session 1, and we're going to be talking specifically about love in our culture and what does that look like in our relationships? What does that look like specifically in the marriage relationship? You know, love is a very interesting thing in our culture because it's that word is used so lightly. I love ice cream. I love this. I love that. And in our culture, we've almost been consumed with this idea that love is simply how I feel. Have you ever experienced that? You determine how, based on how you feel about something or how you feel about a person, and that defines whether or not you love them. And that gets really slippery in marriage because in the marriage relationship, two people, the husband and the wife, come together in a covenant relationship before God and before their peers, their family, and their friends, and they commit their lives to each other. And if you've been doing marriage very long, then you know that our feelings go up and down. Our feelings are fleeting, right? They change based on the situations and the circumstances in our lives. And so it's very detrimental if we view love only by feelings, specifically in the marriage relationship. I cannot tell you guys how many times I've counseled married couples, counseled different either the husband or the wife, and they tell me, my husband says he doesn't love me anymore. My wife says she doesn't love me anymore. And so often that commitment is simply based on how they feel. They're not doing what I want them to do, so in their mind, they've determined that they don't love them anymore. And here's what I want to challenge us with as we kick off this series and as we're in session 1 talking about love is we have to begin to look at love differently. We have to look at love through the lens of the gospel. The gospel is the good news of Jesus Christ, the reality that we are dead in our sin, that we can't rescue ourselves and be made right with God, but yet Jesus came and lived a perfect life, defeated death through the grave, took on our sin through the cross and defeated death through the grave so that we could be brought back into relationship with God. And he loved us so much, God did, that he sent his son. And so through this truth, we begin to see what true love is. We begin to see the love that we should operate with in our marriage that should be applied to our marriage. And that's this idea of the gospel. And when we experience this kind of love in our marriages and we begin to see our spouse through a different lens, not through the world's lens of influence of how do I feel, but yet what does God show us that love truly is, because he defines what love is. And he shows us through sending his son and his sacrificial life that he lived on our behalf. Just imagine in our relationships, in our marriages, if we begin to actually truly live with that kind of love. We have this model that God gives us that shows us what love is to be. This is literally the blueprint for our marriages. I believe that the good news of Jesus, this gospel, this good news is the blueprint that we are responsible to apply to our marriages. It's a really interesting thing when you look at this in 1 John 3:16. I want you to hear what the Bible says. It says in 1 John, not John 3:16, but 1 John 3:16, it says, and I'm reading the NIV version here, it says, this is how we know what love is. This is how we can know love. If you want to know what it means to love, this is how you can know that Jesus Christ laid down his life for us. If you ever are questioning what is love, how am I supposed to love my wife? How can I love this man or this woman for 40, for 50 years? Well, it's by sacrificing. It's by laying yourself down for the good of the other person. And when we enter into the marriage relationship and make that commitment before God, he shows us that it calls for sacrifice. And I'm really excited because in your group today, you're going to be discussing these 3 essentials to love through the lens of what Jesus has done for us, through the lens of the gospel. It's going to be an awesome thing. And I'm going to tell you something. I've dealt with helping couples who were on the verge of giving up. And we began to look at, how does Jesus love us? If you're struggling with loving your spouse, you're not feeling it, You need to step away from that and begin to look through a different lens at what God's called you to and how he's called you to love. And we're going to look at the lens of what Jesus has done for us, the gospel. And you're going to be looking at that in your group today and looking at these three different essentials of what it means to love. And I promise you this, if you truly will lay yourself out there, put yourself out there, and apply these three principles you're going to look at in this lesson today, I believe it will transform your marriage. I have seen it. I have seen marriages on the verge of ending. And they begin to apply these things, and those people come back to me and go, this transformed my marriage. I love my wife more than I ever thought I could. Because I actually lived a sacrificial life toward her, toward him, my feelings now have gone through the roof. They have skyrocketed like I never thought they could. At Vaughn Forest, we believe that marriage is critical. We believe it's a huge foundation for our church and in our culture. And so we love families. We are committed to building families and investing in families. And so we want to encourage you to look at these three truths of what God says love is and begin to apply them to your relationships, to your marriage. Thanks.